Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka the Angry Nerd. The Angry Nerd Podcast is taped in front of a live Facebook audience from my mom's basement. The Angry Nerd Podcast is brought to you in part by some bad life choices and a few shattered dreams. The Angry Nerd Podcast is made possible by money that my wife gives me from my SSI check, some chick named Joni, and proceeds from listeners like you. And if you want to be one of the listeners that helps contribute to this show getting better and better, go to Cash App and purchase one of the Angry Nerd Podcast shirts. They come in black and white, and from sizes small to extra large through the holiday season, you can get yours for the low price of $15 plus shipping and handling. So, a lot of things have happened here recently in the world, in the country. We have a president crying, whining, not wanting to get out of office. We got another president-elect who breaks his ankle playing with dogs. I don't know. Crazy stuff. And then we, the regular people of the country, are going stone crazy. I see young men killing young ladies that reject their sexual advances. Seeing young ladies setting men up because I don't like you no more. Just all manner of crazy stuff. People going to jail for PPP fraud. You got rappers going to jail because they're making songs about finessing the system, getting that COVID money. And then you got COVID. Can't forget about COVID. I think that's going to be, COVID is as American as apple pie now at this point. Doesn't it feel that way? Doesn't it feel like it's been around for a long time? Doesn't it feel like COVID's always been here? It's only been like the past almost 2 years, but it seems like COVID has been around for such a long time. Speaking of COVID, before I get into tonight's topic, which is code switching, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about code switching. But I was in the store the other day. And I was buying a cigar. And the lady asked me for ID. I said, sure, here's my ID. But I got a mask on. It's cold out, so I got a beanie and a hoodie on. How are you going to know who I am? Even if I give you my ID. I got my mask on. You can't see my face. And of course, this was a BT1000 who just didn't care, didn't see the joke in it. I was just kidding around. She didn't give a gee whiz at all. So she, the joke, it missed. It didn't land. It is what it is. Maybe she wasn't a BT1000. Maybe the joke just wasn't good and it didn't land. But in either case, it got me to thinking. This is how they're going to get everybody to take that chip. But you don't hear me though. You don't hear me, do you? We got masks on. I think masks are going to be our normal. Everyone has to wear the mask. How are we going to prove who we are? Enters the chip. Has anybody seen the chip? They started tagging dogs and everything like that with the chips. Has all their information on it. I'm not going to get biblical and talk about the mark of the beast and all that. Who shot John? Just seems too mystical for me. But when you talk about an institution of control, because that's what religion is, that's what politics are. These are institutions of control. And let me tell you, they got the American people, at this point, the people of the world are afraid. The people of the world are afraid, so everybody's masked up. Everyone agrees to the mask. You don't even have to work at an establishment. Another patron to see you without your mask on and be ready to throw hands with you if you don't have your mask on. If you're a person like me who tries to keep the peace, although I am capable of great violence, I try to keep the peace. I don't think you're a peacekeeper just because you don't resort to violence unless you have the ability to do great violence. Otherwise, you're just a weenie who's trying to avoid confrontation. Those of us who are men of mayhem, we try to avoid these situations because we know what lengths we'll go to and we know what type of drama we can bring to somebody. That was a little tangent on what it means to actually be a peacekeeper. That's when you're keeping the peace, when you know you can hurt somebody and you choose not to, and you look for an avenue away from that situation. So the mask has become the normal. Everybody is okay with the mask. Everyone feels comfortable with the mask. But enters problem number one, identification. How do we identify one another if everyone has on a mask? I saw two people in the Home Depot a few weeks ago who apparently went to high school together. And the guy's like, "Hey, Jan, is that you?" And she's like, "Peter? Oh, wow. Oh, it's so difficult to recognize anybody. Everyone has a mask on." And he's like, "Yeah, so how's Dan? How's Dan doing?" You know, and they had this big, like they were meeting each other again. And I was eavesdropping because I was waiting to purchase something. I was right near where they were. So I was like, listening to the conversation and the exchange and whatnot. And these people have known each other for a number of years, since high school. And it took them a while to recognize one another. So that being said, you can't recognize people by their eyes. The United States government is setting the stage, in my opinion, because I don't have any facts to back this up. It was a thought, and I don't think that I'm the smartest person in the country. And if I had this thought, people smarter than me, more influential than me, with power and money and resources, they had this thought. This is how we track every man, woman, boy, and girl who wants to live in this country and who wants to live among the people. Oh, we're going to give you the chip. You don't have the chip, you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't ride, you can't fly. You want to know what's funny? I haven't heard any pastors talking about this. Whenever people get finished, they're going to say, someone's going to find these recordings, someone's going to find the Angry Nerd podcast in 100 years, and they're going to say, that dude right there was on it, man. He was effing on it. Because I'm telling you, the preachers are all involved with it. That's why no churches are speaking out against this. The mark of the beast. They've been telling me all that "Who Shot John" my whole life. And here we are in a situation that resembles more closely than any other situation in my lifetime to the end of days, according to Revelation. And we don't have pastors talking about the chip that they are getting everybody prepped for. We got the fear. We've decided we need the mask. We need to hide our faces. Now we got to be able to identify you guys. Come get the chip. They're going to take that needle, stick it in your arm. It's going to say, and you're going to be implanted. Not only are you going to be implanted, they're not going to have to force you. You're going to line up the same way you did to go get that long ass Q-tip stuck up your nose. You're going to line up and go out there and let the people put the chip in you. Just like you let them put the Q-tip up your nose and you let them put the mask on you, you're going to let them put the chip on you. And not only are you going to do it, you're going to feel good. The same way you felt good with the Q-tip and you feel good with the mask, you're going to feel good with the chip too. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. Anyways, tonight's topic, code switching. let me give you a brief definition of what code switching is for my Caucasian brethren who have no idea what I'm talking about, because the powers that be typically are Caucasian. So most of my Caucasian brethren don't have to switch codes. Anyways, code switching, according to Google, is the practice of alternating between two or more languages or variety of language in conversation. Okay, let me break that down in for my white brothers and sisters and tell you what that means. Have you ever encountered your black friend in his environment? You know what I mean? Have you ever gone down to the hood and witnessed Tyrone interact with other blacks? Have you ever done that? Probably not. You think you're going to get your ass kicked, but you're not. You know, we're the most loving people, caring and kind people that you ever want to meet. I promise you. I've taken plenty of my white friends, and at great encouragement, I had to really urge them and reassure them that, listen, man, you're not going to get your ass kicked, James, okay? Come on. Let's go to this black club. So, code switching, if you ever venture on down to the hood or to the Jets or wherever your black friend at work lives, go and observe him in his environment. You will see that the vernacular that Tyrone uses when he's amongst his people is very different than the vernacular that he uses in the office. Most of us who are really good at it, like myself, we code switch without, it's not even a conscious thought. Like we don't even think about it. You know, it's like, I remember being at the gym one day and we were all shaking hands after I think we ranked up, somebody ranked up or something good happened, and let me tell you something. White people, I don't know if y'all invented the high five, but the high five is my move. I love the high five. Anytime a group high five takes place, oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, that just makes me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. So we're doing this group high five. We're forming a line. Smack, smack, smack. Everybody's high fiving. And all of the white people, I'm high fiving. Oh, yeah, Bradley. Boom. Hey, Taylor. Smack. All right, Trevor. You know, and then I got to Daquan, and it was like, all right, my man. Okay, bro. There is an example of code switching. Someone has a skit where the black guy's walking down the line and he's shaking all the white guys' hands. Good job, sir. Good job. And he gets to the brothers and he's like, yo, bro, you know, and he daps him up, hugs him. Gets to the next white person, shakes their hand, all the way down to like a little white baby, even shakes the little white baby's hand. That's code switching. And I think code switching originated as a coping mechanism in slavery. Because I imagine that conversations that went on in the slave quarters were vastly different from conversations that took place in the big house. Do you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure a lot of those conversations had to do with putting a foot in master's ass and that kind of stuff and busting his head. How we'd love to get a hold of little Janice. You know, so I imagine that code switching for black people originated in slavery times. Because why wouldn't you switch code? It's like we can't be talking that trash like we talk with Jasper and Cornbread over here. Now we're up here around Master and we're around his, you know, the overseers and things like that. So we're going to speak with the best diction and the best language that we have. And we're going to kind of take a little bit of that gruff off of the voice, you know, and show our back teeth to you when we talk, sir. You know, I think that's where code switching started. And personally, I've always spoken well. I hate that. I hate that's even a thing, to speak well. But I've always been a person who knew how to, as far as I understood it, conduct myself based on what situation I was in. You don't have the same conversation with the king as you do with the pauper. That's not to say that I show the king more respect than the pauper, but the language and the flavor of our conversation is going to be vastly different. For those who don't get that, how about this? You don't have the same flavor of conversation with your grandmother as you do with the homies. You're not over here talking crazy with grandma like you talk crazy with your friends. Typically, most people, there are exceptions to the rule. Some people are crazy, but most people conduct themselves to the best of their ability when they're around their grandmother. So code switching is no different than that. Personally, let me share this story with you. Once upon a time, I went by Sean. Growing up, I went by Sean. People at school knew me as Arshawn because that's my government name, my given name. But my family and anybody who knew me outside of work knew me as Sean. And I watched a documentary once, and I can't remember who did it. It was one of those journalists back in the day, Geraldo Rivera or Maury or somebody like that. They put together this thing and they showed where when you have a flavorful African American name, Daquan, Raekwon, Arshawn, Deshaun, you are less likely to be hired by employers because they already know that you're black. And based on that name, they have prejudged you. That's a bunny ears ghetto name. So that being a ghetto name, this must be a ghetto person. We all know the negative connotations attached to ghetto people. Most of which are false. But because of that, I started going by Sean. I would fill out job applications with Sean Wade instead of Arshawn. And I would only put my real name on there after I got the job. Of course, for legal reasons, getting my check and everything like that. So I would go by Sean Wade. And I would fill my application out like that. And I would always make sure that the manager was not in when I turned my application in. And I would call because I knew that I spoke well on the phone. They wouldn't know that I was black until I got there. And many times I have gone to a job interview and I'm sitting out there and I'm waiting at the human resources department and they would come out and say, Sean Wade? And I'm like, oh yes, hey there, how are you? And they would look, you're Sean Wade? Yes, ma'am. And I could see right away. They're like, oh, he's good. He's good. Because I was just a kid that wanted to get a gig. And I knew that I had obstacles because of the color of my skin, because of the interactions that the people who held the jobs had with previous black people. So I would talk on the phone and I intentionally tried to sound white. And I've gotten many jobs. I'm like, if I get past the application process, I am a great interviewee. Like, I interview very well. I'm funny. I'm charismatic. I'm knowledgeable. I know how to say the right things based on the job that I'm going out for. It's always a leadership position. I've been in leadership the entire time I've been working. I've always been in leadership. I know what a supervisor or manager is supposed to do. So I interview well, and so I always left my birth name off of the job application because I knew once I got there, white people like me. I hate it. Here's the dichotomy of being a black person that white people like. They're not afraid of you. So they're going to tell you their joke that involves the N-word, and they're not going to edit the N-word out like they typically do when they're dealing with, Hakeem, or you know what I'm saying? When they're dealing with one of the bruh-bruhs. Them cats that just got that look about them, them James Evans looking brothers. They don't play that with James. They'll play it with Arshawn though. I always have to address it like, do you always say that, or are you just saying that to me? Of course they're just, well, you're one of the good ones, Arshawn. You're one of the nice ones. And I'm like, what is this ones that you speak of? What is the ones? You're saying I'm one of the nice ones. I hate that. But you're one of the good ones. You're not like the ones we see on the news. You're not like the ones that we've been told about growing up. You're one of the, you're okay. No, I'm not, I'm not okay. And I hate it. I wish could just flip a switch and be like, boom, gangster. But I can't. It's not who I am. Like, I don't possess the physical ability to do that just by a look. I can slap stew out of somebody. I've done that before. But that's just not the way I desire to live my life. I wish I could just shoot a white dude at work saying some bull crap a look, because there's some brothers who could just bam, hit him with a look. You remember that movie, New Guy on Campus or something like that, where Eddie Griffin was teaching DJ Qualls how to make the look, and he finally was able to do it. I can't do it. But there are people in the black community that frown on you for code switching. Oh, you're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. Of course they'll call you an Uncle Tom because most black people haven't actually read the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. Otherwise they would know that Uncle Tom was a righteous, upstanding black man. Sambo and the other guy, I forgot the other favorites. He's had some slave name, but Sambo was the antagonist. Sambo was the guy who beat Uncle Tom. He was the one that when he said beat the black people, and Uncle Tom said, I'm not doing that, because he had integrity. Sambo's the guy who's give me here. I'll whoop him dead. So anyways, I digress. A little bit of history there for my white people because they have no idea either. But when you have the ability to code switch, I've been called a coon. I've been called a Uncle Tom. I've been called a sellout. I've been called whitewashed. And I know plenty of other black people who have been too. They've been called all of these names and they've been treated badly because they have an ability to blend in. And I don't look at it as the ability to sell out. I don't think of it as I'm selling out or I'm an Uncle Tom. Most of my white friends, I won't say most, my white friends know I'm pro-black. And if you say something bogus, I will check you about it, but I don't get mad, and I'm not talking about busting somebody's head or abusing someone or treating someone badly, because I don't get emotional like that. But I do believe in informing somebody who I care about. If you're my friend and you're around me, I care about you. So if you say something bogus, I just correct you about it, give you some information, and we can move on and continue to be friends. That's another thing that code switching has taught me, because I've been around other cultures. And since you know how to blend and you know how to, when in Rome, do as Romans do kind of situation, when you know how to do that, you have an ability to absorb information from other people's cultures from their perspective. Whether it's being with the Hispanics or being with white people or Puerto Ricans or whoever else, you have the ability to blend and not be so rigid. But I will tell you that I have been criticized my entire life. Well, in my developmental years, I went to an all-white school until I was in like the 4th or 5th grade, when we moved from California. So I had been around Caucasian people through my developmental years. So I've never had that. And plus, these are Caucasian people in California. So it was a little bit different from Arkansas and Oklahoma and Louisiana, Mississippi. It was just a little bit different. Racism in the city is different than racism in the country. Racism in the city is like covert. You know what I mean? It's like covert. Like no one's riding down the street calling you the N-word, giving you the finger with a Confederate flag in the truck. No. They just don't hire you, or they won't give you a bank loan, or something like that. You know, it's like, oh, you just don't qualify. It's not because you're black, it's because you don't qualify. So that's kind of the difference. Like in the South, dude in a jacked up 4x4 truck got the Confederate flag and Robert E. Lee, painted on his truck, give you the finger, calling you the N-word. And I'm like, that kind of racism doesn't even bother me. It's the whole job thing and the financial institutions that bar you from living in certain places or getting certain loans. That's the kind of stuff that I have a problem with. But growing up around Caucasian, well, I won't even just say Caucasian people, because I've always lived in cities that were like melting pots. So I've been around blacks and Asians and white people, Hispanics, just all different kinds of people. And I'm used to being around all different kinds of cultures. But interacting with white people at an early age taught me to have an open mind about things, because it wasn't later on in life. There were a lot of misnomers taught to me about white people. I don't know where the white people can't cook thing comes from, but I wouldn't eat at my white friend's house because I was told my whole life that white people couldn't cook. And that's not entirely true. And now I imagine, like most stereotypes, it does have it has some truth to it. There is somebody, or there might be a good number of white people that have actualized that and validated that statement. But from my experience, there are some white people who can really get down in the kitchen. So, but if it hadn't been for the ability to code switch, do you think that my white friends' moms would let me come over their house if I didn't know how to behave in the manner that they're used to children behaving? You can't come over here and just do your kids can't come to my house and just do some stuff that I don't allow my kids to do. And I don't expect my kids to go over your house doing things that you don't allow your kids to do. But sometimes people who lack the ability to code switch think that things go that way. Well, this is what I allow my kid. Well, not over here, because we don't allow kids to do that in this house. Now we have a problem. I think, here's my opinion about people who do not know how to code switch. You also don't know how to foster relationships. You probably don't know how to maintain friendships and romantic relationships because you don't have the ability to be flexible. You don't have the ability to do in Rome as they're doing in Rome. And it probably causes you a lot of problems. I don't think that because you're a hood person, you should be a hood person when you're working at McDonald's and you're in the drive-thru window. I appreciate that, bro. I'm sorry? What did you say? I came here and I expect customer service, but I didn't get customer service. I got hood stuff. I don't appreciate that. I worked at McDonald's for 4 years, and people who knew me in the streets would come in there and they would throw their hands up. Hey, what up, bro? Woo, 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 woo. And I would be like, thank you for choosing McDonald's. Can I help you? And they would look at me. I would take their order, bag it up. Hey, is there anything else I can do for you today? You have a wonderful day. And people, hey, man, this is a place of business. I'm not in here on some boo-boo and ray-ray type stuff. I'm in here taking this seriously because this is where I earn my money. And in the black community, in my experience with the black community, I was looked at as a lame. I was looked at as a company man. And I'm like, how is that bad? How is that bad? I don't see code switching as a bad thing. You ever see how Oriental people conduct themselves? Oh yes, oh yes, I take care of you. I take care of you. Yes. And then they have a conversation. They like, yes, it's okay. Don't worry. We take care of you. You know, you know what I mean? Because they recognize that you are the customer. Treat you nice, treat you with respect. They do have a leg up where they have their own language to talk trash about us in. So I think they do have a little bit of an advantage. But even people who don't speak English recognize the value in code switching. Hispanics, when you go to their establishments, same thing. My problem is with my people, black people, somehow or another, everything that we can use as an advantage to advance in this country, we demonize it. Now, if I get up here and I bunny ears, this is something I've been told my whole life. If I get up here and I talk like a white boy, but in my heart, my agenda is to help black people, what problem do you really have with me? We elect people based on the way that they look or based on the way Kamala Harris, if Kamala Harris was white, she would be looked at as a racist based on her policy and based on the way that she has lived her life as a prosecutor. She would be looked at as a racist. That's how many black dudes she done messed around in the judicial system. But because she almost sorta black, and then she wore Chuck Taylors. Oh shoot, that's hood. They don't get more hood than Chuck Taylor, baby. Chuck Taylor's on the West Coast. She went East Coast. She put on some Timberlands. Boom. Put on the Timbos. She's official. She hood official. Really? Are you serious, man? Do you know what she did? She used code switching to her advantage. She used code switching to her advantage. That's what she did. She doesn't normally wear Timberland boots. She doesn't normally wear Chuck Taylors. That was her code switching in order to garner a desired effect from the target audience. That's what she did. And suckers went out there and fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Having the ability to code switch, I feel like, is a superpower. Having the ability to code switch, I think, is necessary, especially for minorities in this country. Why do you say that? Well, because typically the powers that be are Caucasian. And it's less about racism and more about familiarity. When you go to get a job, do a little research. I think there was a Gillette or a Schick, somebody, I think it was Gillette. I think it was a Gillette commercial where the guy runs in there and he's late for the interview, and he looks on the wall and sees all the pictures and see that the guy is a bald man with glasses, and everybody on the wall, all the previous people who've held this position have all been bald-headed white guys with glasses. He runs and goes and gets a Gillette razor and shaves his head and then comes back. And when the guy opens the door, he's standing there with the bald head. My man's standing there with the bald head. He gets the job. And I felt like that was the most adequate representation of how things actually work in this country. Oftentimes, listen, don't be narrow-minded and silly and, oh, he just said racism don't exist. No. Racism is real and racism exists. But what I'm saying, oftentimes we mistake preference for racism. I knew that my last company, I wasn't going to go very far. Why? Because I'm a vegetarian and I'm a skinny black dude. I don't hunt. You want to know what everybody who moves up has in common? They eat meat. They hunt. The president of the company has a deer camp and hunting grounds where he takes people hunting at. I'm never going to move up in a company like that because we don't have anything in common. People will be more willing to work with someone that they have in common with versus someone who actually does the job better. But you don't hear me though. People will rather work with someone that they have things in common with versus someone who is better qualified and does a better job. It's about familiarity. So oftentimes you will see the powers that be, oftentimes these companies are ran by Caucasian men. Having the ability to code switch, even though you're black, but you speak with the vernacular that they're used to. You speak with the type of diction that they're used to. Not used to coming from a black person, but that they're used to. Speaking their language. Conducting yourself in a way that they're used to. I tell my son all the time, it's like being an actor. You're just playing a role. You don't have to actually be a good little boy at school. You just have to play the role of the good little boy at school. That's it. It's about being that character for those 8 hours a day. And that character, if you're playing that character well, that character is going to be rewarded. And when you go to these job interviews or you go to these annual reviews at your job, if you learn how to code switch and play a role, be a character to get a desired result, oftentimes you're going to get that result. You're going to get what you're seeking out for. But if you do not have the ability to code switch, I guarantee you, you're going to continue to be stagnant in your place of work. You're going to be stagnant in whatever company you're involved with or whatever groups you're involved with. You're going to be stagnated because you don't have the ability to be flexible. The 48 laws of power talk about being the perfect courtier. You are not the same person to the king as you are to the pauper. It just doesn't work like that. And I think a lot of times black people, what we've done is we have, as a coping mechanism, we've learned to look down on anything we don't have. Does that make sense? If we don't have the ability to code switch, so, oh, you acting white. Oh, you a sellout. Oh, you ain't hood. And I'm like, thank you. It's not my goal. My goal is to leave the hood or purchase the hood, improve the hood, get better, not worse, not stay sitting on the corner with the homies drinking 40s. That's not my intention. So we'll see somebody get successful like a Will Smith and then talk about how he's not hood. He ain't street. Who wants to be that? Who wants to be street? Who wants to be hood? The people in the hood don't even want to be hood. The people in the street don't even want to be street. But we've learned as a coping mechanism to berate and downgrade anything that we don't have the ability to acquire. And I think that's what happens with people who have the ability to code switch. They get called coons and they get called Uncle Toms. Now, don't get me wrong. As a pro-black person, I think that those are very appropriate terms for some people in the way that they conduct themselves. Let's talk about what coons and Uncle Toms are. These are the people who are around Caucasian people and they think they're better than other black people. These are the people who tap dance and soft shoe around Caucasian people. There's a very difference between code switching and cooning. Oftentimes you hear people cooning and they say things that just don't sound right. You don't necessarily have to be, you know what, I almost put my foot in my mouth. You do have to be pro-black if you're black. Because being pro-black doesn't mean I'm anti-white. Drop bombs on that. Being pro-black doesn't mean anti-white. In fact, the majority of my friends are white. And I still profess to be pro-black because I love being black. I hope they're pro-white. I hope they love being white. Hope they don't be talking about the N-word and stuff like that when I... What's wrong with being proud of who you are? Nothing at all. But I recognize that the powers that be are Caucasian people oftentimes. And even when I've been in situations where my superior was black, I still conducted myself the same way I would if he were Caucasian. And I think he appreciated that. The fact that I didn't try to yo homie yo him as a superior just because he was black. We never talked about it but I think he appreciated that. Because I've been a supervisor or in a leadership role my whole time as a person working, even as a youngster working fast food. I've always the kitchen lead or whoever, best boy. I've always been in a leadership role. And that's always what happens to me. I always have to check somebody. Bro. Hey, say bro, I'm not your bro. What can I do for you? I've always had to be that guy. Because, and I watch you call the white man who's younger than you, Mr. So-and-so. And call me bro. But because I have the ability to code switch, I'm the coon. I feel like that's coon behavior. A white superior gets treated with respect, but a black superior doesn't. Who's the real coon in that situation? So we look at things vastly different in the black community. And those of us who have the ability to code switch, I know people who, because they had the ability to code switch and they were berated and they were belittled and they were criticized so much that they eventually turned into coons based on the fact that they became self-hating black people as a result of the hate that they received from the black community. And I understood that. I still don't think it's right. I will continue to fight the good fight. I will continue to stand on the fact that I think everyone needs to learn how to code switch. As long as the powers that be are another ethnic group. If the power shifted in this country and the power was Hispanic, I think we need to learn about the Hispanic culture, and we would have to code switch then. If you go to any other country and you want to do business, I think that code switching is one of the chief tenets in business. That's not to say that you waver in your morals or values or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, if you are over here doing business in China, it would behoove you to learn the customs of that people. Then you learn when you're supposed to bow and what's a term of respect, how respect is viewed in that country. One thing I know about the Chinese, as well as the Japanese and the Koreans, most Asian people, respect is super, super big. They are very conservative people. And I've learned that you don't want to be ostentatious around Asian people. That's just, they're very humble, very conservative people. You don't want to go around being flashy and showy and loud and boisterous. You don't want to be that guy. And I've learned that about their culture. And for me, code switching is about culture. It's about knowing the culture of the people that you're dealing with and being able to dip your toe into that pool and be okay. Not only do you want to survive, you want to thrive. And you can only do that if you have the ability to code switch. I know there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of black people out there who hear this and say, no, he's whitewashed, he's cooning, this, that, and the third. I beg to differ. It's about winning, getting the W by any means necessary. You can continue with all that if you want to, and continue to reap the negative benefits of that. Continue to get whatever consequences come with acting like that at those people's job, in those people's establishments. I see it happen. You go downtown and have to handle some business at a building downtown. There's always going to be somebody conducting themselves like that, and you just look at them like, she ain't got no manners. No home training at all. You don't even know how to act in public. You don't know how to conduct yourself when you come to handle business. It's a very sad situation. I look at it as a sad situation. I see this woman, 40-something years old, 6 kids behind her. And I say, those poor babies. They're going to see that as normal. And they're going to run out here and conduct themselves like that. Gee whiz, that's a horrible situation for those babies. So I hope the takeaway from this situation is this. If you don't have the ability to code switch, get with someone who does and learn it so that we can start being more successful in the black community. That's not to compromise your blackness. That's not to say that I'm not black. And that show as hell ain't to say go out and coon. Yes, sir, Mr. Charlie. Oh, yeah. Oh, I sure thanks you. It's not to go out with your hat in hand. But what it is about is knowing the rules of a basketball game or knowing the rules of a volleyball game or knowing the rules of a soccer game. If you're going to play the game, you have to know the rules. You have to know that these are social game rules that you have to be able to master. Here's a kicker as I close out. My white friends in the trailer park, they have to do the same thing. They got to do the same thing. They have to code switch. Why? Because they over there talking that old talk and talking about that dope. And they have to go and learn how to conduct themselves in a place of business, because there's what I found out. There's levels to this white stuff. Oh, you better believe it. All white ain't white. You got white, and wide. But all jokes aside, my white friends had to do the same thing. They have to go and conduct themselves in a different way. Because there's a difference between poor white people and white people who got that paper. White people who are movers and shakers and white people who run the world. Those are different kinds of white folks. So think about that the next time you hear one of your black friends on the phone and he's talking to a potential employer and he's saying yes sir and no sir and yes ma'am and no ma'am, and he's using his, what we call in the black community, his bill collector voice. It's very important to remove the stigma attached to code switching, because I think that the lacking the ability to code switch is perpetuating our failure as a community, as black people. Hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. As a matter of fact, this might have all been bull crap. Who knows? But before I get out of here, let me give a shout out to my homeboy Dylan Brackley and Jim McDonough over at Savage Hippie. As y'all can see, I got the Savage Hippie beanie cap on tonight. rocking out, looking real debonair. Anybody on YouTube can see the beanie. But if you're on Spotify or Podbean, let me just tell you, black beanie with the black and brown design. Oh man, it's beautiful. Wish you guys could see it. And if you want one of those designs, hit these guys up on Facebook, on Instagram, or email them at savagehippie.com. I think it's Big Cartel /Savage Hippie. Yeah, that's what it is. So if you want one of these beanies or any of their other apparel, these guys have the greatest designs. They are awesome. They're amazing. Go check them out, man. But anyways, be on the lookout. 2021 Man Talk Tuesdays. It's coming. I'm already talking to my guys. We got some good conversations lined up for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it a whole lot. My name is Arshawn Wade, a.k.a. The Angry Nerd. Peace.